Hey, all my Cancer friends. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Terry Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your May 2024 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Cancer, I'm talking about Cancer rising. This is also applicable to Cancer moon, Cancer sun, as well as if you have 3 or more personal planets in the sign of Cancer. That's known as a stellium. This video is applicable to you. And I am in the Pacific time zone. So when I talk about the day and the time, it's based on that. So please adjust for your location. All right, let's just jump right in because when we start the month, we see quite a bit of activity going on for our Cancers in our 10th and 11th house. The 10th house is the most public view house. It's known as our public status. It represents our ambition. It represents the structures with which we achieve in and of which we even support or we are authorities of. It's where leadership lies. We see yours as the sign of Aries. This naturally squares your first house of self, and at the same time, it creates a sense of calling you forth to birth a sense of yourself. Cancer first house is about the self, and Aries by nature is about the self and pioneering the self and discovering the self. We see that the month starts with Mercury has gone direct, and it's had a very strong conversation when it was retrograde with the North Node, and now it's moving forward again. This was a pretty intense Mercury retrograde because it went over not only the North Node, but Chiron 3 times. And it's about to meet with Chiron in a day or so. And this is going to bring up any sort of wounds you have about the self, any way that you have maybe given yourself up or you have deferred and not made yourself a priority. This is going to bring thoughts of that. It could even bring up childhood thoughts or thoughts of how you interact with your siblings, your cousins, your everyday activities with people in your world. Mercury rules our everyday, and not only our emails and our communications, but our roadways and our errands and our all the little details of the life that we live that we don't even think about. So here in the sign of Aries, Mercury's really been thinking about, how do I want to assert myself? How do I want to make myself a priority, make myself enjoy life more as a driver of the bus of my life versus just maybe potentially supporting everybody else, because Cancer is a very supportive, loving, nurturing, maternal energy. And when we see this here, Aries, the sign of public status and career and ambition, and then we're going to see these planets, not only the ones that are already in your 11th house, they're all going to start to migrate in this direction. So we're going to feel a strong pull to want to birth more and more of your individuality and recognize potentially ancestral dynamics within your soul that you are here to address in this lifetime. So let's real quickly, I want to point out too that Pluto and Neptune are in a sextile, as well as Mars on the first day of this month. And this is strong energy. The sextile is favorable energy. Mars is now in its rulership, and it's going to spend, the next 3 weeks or so in this sign before it moves into Gemini. And as it does that, it has a lot more power, a lot more strength, a lot more ambition, for lack of a better term. And we see that Venus is in her domicile in your 11th house. So while this may make you uncomfortable, here's a square to Pluto, the supporting sextiles here really call for you to stretch yourself beyond where you have been before. And this would be for your hopes and your dreams. The natural 11th house rules your desires. It rules many of the groups that you will interact with, the people, the World Wide Web, the social groups, the even political groups, the larger networks of people. It rules the nervous system. Here we're going to feel a sense of history that overlays the 11th house desires and innovation. So while Venus is technically squaring, which would be like, I'm afraid of transformation, I'm afraid of rocking, the boat in some ways. And you could also have trepidation about your own skills, how you will be received. But at the same time, this is a very, very favorable aspect. And Neptune and Pluto will spend the next decade plus in a sextile, calling forth great, deep psychological transformation and renovation, and using the divine laws of the universe to implement that transformation. So we'll see this actual, I think we'll see this conjunction one more time. No, we will not. The next time these two planets meet, Neptune will have moved into Aries, and then that will be a very, very powerful energy. But we'll get there in 2025. Let me go to the next day where we see Pluto retrograde. This is going to take place. Pluto's going to retrograde all the way back into Capricorn to the 27th degree before it retrogrades forward again. It's going to step into Capricorn on September 2nd. And that could be a very powerful time, again, for a revisit of the structures in your life, of what is authentic to you. Capricorn is your 7th house of relationships. So you're going to revisit both personal as well as professional contractual relationships. And part of that visit is going to be, how do you create a sense of harmony and peace and joy? And how do you support your own desires moving forward? This is about the individual, not just the partnership. We see we're still experiencing this tight conjunction between Uranus and Jupiter. This is going to be going on all month. And then around the 25th, Jupiter will move into your 12th house, expanding your sense of potentially your sense of spirituality and your awareness of that through teaching, through writing, through speaking. You could potentially be the student, or you could potentially be the teacher. Let's go now to the 7th, where we will see a new moon, and that's going to happen at 8:21 p.m. Let me get Pacific time. And this new moon is in Taurus, which is, again, your 11th house. So here at the 18th degree, which is the degree of service, the Virgo degree, the degree of Mercury, that Mercury rules. And while we don't have an actual corresponding aspect to the new moon and Mercury and Chiron's conjunction here in your 10th house, I very much feel as if there is something here that offers the transformation of the wound, an epiphany, something you've experienced, and it could potentially be something that is laying beneath the surface. We see that Neptune is making this beautiful, has sextiles to Uranus and Jupiter. Then we have this trine factor going on between Jupiter and Pluto, and then Pluto again is sextiling Neptune, and Neptune is at the anaretic degree, the degree of mastery. That mastering is not wrestling with the mind, but rather understanding the ebb and the flow of the light and the dark, the easy and the hard, the unknown and the known. So here at this time, planting the seeds for your own truth, for your own opportunity to use the spiritual laws of the universe to extract your talents and to give you the bravery to step into that vibration, could be super powerful for you. Because again, we're seeing this activity in your 11th house that represents the networks, like you could birth something on the internet, you could birth an Etsy account, you could just start to utilize your talents within your everyday life, even within your career. But Taurus is going to represent bounty and flow of resources through your skills, through who you are as an individual. So I think this is really powerful. Plus, we've been seeing this conjunction for all this whole year. We've been feeling the power of this growing conjunction. And now that it's separating, we're still going to feel it moving forward. And I want to offer that Jupiter rules business, commerce, and expansion, and moving into foreign territory. And foreign territory is not always moving my physical body to another land, but maybe moving my philosophies from one place to another. And that's what this new moon, where the darkest phase of the moon, you have an opportunity to plant the seeds that will give you a favorable dynamic for your transformation and your independence. And while Pluto retrogrades into Capricorn, it's going to be cleaning out the closet for those last little nooks and crannies that we might have missed the first few times. So while this is never easy, Pluto is never initially easy, it's always very efficient and brings bounty and riches beyond our measure. Let's look and see. Let's go to the 15th now. I think this is a powerful day in the sense that Mercury moves into a new sign. I'm going to go back to 12 o'clock. Mercury is at the 0 degree of Taurus. This is again where you have an opportunity to new ideas, using your skills, your talents, or gathering information, about how to birth your skills and your talents. When we see Venus just within 3 degrees of Uranus and in the sun, they've been traveling together. You can see here, and then there's Jupiter. And Venus is going to get in speed while the sun's going to book on by into Gemini any day now. Venus is going to have a conversation with liberating and rebellious Uranus. And Uranus is going to tell her, you can have anything you want. Will you be brave in utilizing your skills? Will you experiment with your skills and be willing to fail in order to achieve? That's the thing about science and discovery, which is represented in that Aquarius 11th house, is the willingness to go through a process of failure and then winning. And as Venus moves and gets to her conjunction with Jupiter, which will happen, by the time she gets to, let's say, within 2 or 3 degrees of this, we can start feeling a real expansion of money or of belief, or seeing something in the tangible world, Taurus, in the Earth sign, that is representing that you are indeed moving your story forward the way you want it to be. And that can be anything that you yourself as an individual desire. Okay, let's go over to, I think it's 2 days later, we're going to see the exact conjunction. Well, pretty close. Here we're almost there. So this is going to be a real powerful week, and it could feel very kinetic. Your energies could feel very electric in some ways. And it could, in some ways, be very almost like an actor getting on stage. That's what it feels like to me. There's a sense of part of me wants to run the other direction, and the other part of me is very excited about what's about to happen. Now, we see, I think that the fear part or the trepidation may come from Mercury's square to Pluto. And again, here's Pluto in your 8th house of transformation, and there's Mercury in your 12th house. So there's going to be some sort of tense moment, and it could involve a sibling, it could involve a workmate, a teammate, and what it could be is where the same old story shows up, and historically you've responded a certain way, and this time you respond in a different way. But it isn't easy for you to do because it requires physical and mental awareness and consciousness, almost as if you're trying in some ways to support the new version of you versus a more challenged version of you. Now let's also look here at Jupiter making this beautiful sextile to Neptune. Both are co-rulers of Pisces, Jupiter in ancient times, so they're always going to be a cooperative energy together, a flow. And I believe this flow is also reflected in Neptune's sextile to Pluto, because this to me is, as I implement these spiritual divine laws, which historically humans have ignored. Humans have, worked hard to make things happen. They have blood, sweat, and tears. These kind of sayings that we've dominated our structures. Now we're shifting and we're understanding how important it is to know what our mind is thinking and to know what our deep philosophies and principles are in regards to this. And this is very favored for transformation, for long-term growth and expansion of it almost feels like a shift from one level to another, but I don't want to make it like an ascension. I want to make it like I'm going from one room to another. And when I go into the new room, I have new things to enjoy within that room. All right, let's go on to the 20th, where the sun will move into Gemini. And we see here now Venus and Jupiter are very much in summit. And this is just expansion, expansion, expansion. And we see that all three of these planets are making a trine over here to Pluto. And this trine is, basically a trine is a favorable aspect that makes whatever the dynamic is easier. So this looking deeply into my soul, looking deeply into where do people have power over me, or where does my fears have power over me, or where does my feelings of not being accepted or feeling vulnerable and raw or naked or incapable in some way. And as you look at that, it all starts to transform, because Uranus has had this very long and intense and powerful conversation with Jupiter, changing my beliefs about myself. And this is Venus coming in saying, I'm ready for that expansion. I'm ready. I had this big conversation way back a few months ago with Saturn about putting structure in. I've walked through, whether I feel like I'm being too hot-headed or too independent. And I thought, no, that's not true. This is Venus having a conversation with herself, because as she's in her rulership here, she very much is calling forth this amazing, there's the sextile, here's this trine to Pluto. Now we see that we still have this square to Mercury, so they're still fighting with the mind and the imprint of the mind. And we see that the moon at this moment is making a bit of a challenging aspects to the dynamic, these quincunxes, but this is brief. And a few hours from now, that aspect will be over. So I'm not really addressing the moon here. Okay, let's go to the full moon. That's going to be on the 23rd of the month at 6:53 a.m. And this is, to me, a really amazing full moon. There's a wonderful illumination that's happening. This is for Cancer. Again, you're looking at your 12th house right now. You're looking at, well, actually, that's not true. The sun is in your 12th house. And we have Sagittarius is your 6th house of work. So there's going to be some sort of illumination. And what I believe that illumination could very well be is playing back to this dynamic I was just speaking of with Venus and Jupiter. We're still seeing the trine to Pluto, very favorable. And of course, we're still seeing this sextile to Neptune. Neptune is boomeranging over here. So there's a beautiful focal point for transformation through the mental implementation of my spiritual practices. And that is, what do I believe about myself before I take physical action? At this 29th degree, the two planets are at the anaretic degree. We see that Neptune is at the anaretic degree, and we know that Pluto is going to spend time at the anaretic degree of Capricorn while it sextiles Neptune. And that dynamic is really offering me leadership and mastery of the ebb and the flow, not expecting everything to be steady and stable, but learning about the roller coaster that is life. So I think this is a really illuminating in a way that brings me comfort. It brings me a sense of solace. It brings me, the moon is making a favorable aspect to trine aspect to Neptune. So as it reflects the sun's light, it gives me this sense of, I am willing to feel my philosophies. I'm willing to implement my philosophies. I'm willing to expand what I have known before and believe that this is a benevolent universe. And if for some reason I'm feeling challenges, because the moon clearly is making an opposition to these planets, Venus and Jupiter here, in addition to the sun, but that opposition, it doesn't feel negative to me. It feels as if it's calling me to come from my heart, to trust my intuitive knowing, to trust that inner voice versus the outer voice. I also want to comment that the Sagittarius energy represents the connection to the angelic realm, and the Sagittarius energy is is naturally ruled by Jupiter. So even in opposition, there's still a cooperative component to it. It's not as difficult as some others. So, all right, let's go on to the 23rd, no, the 25th, where we will see, let me move this back. I believe it's the 25th. Okay, well, we're still seeing Jupiter at 29 degrees, but we can see it's at 57 minutes. So by the end of today, Jupiter will have moved into Gemini, and that's going to be a big shift change. Let me just change the time. Let me go to 6 p.m. Okay, so here we go. We see that Jupiter has moved into Gemini. It's going to be a very airy feeling because Jupiter is considered in detriment in Gemini because it's in its opposition from its natural home. People will say it feels exiled, but I venture to say that Jupiter doesn't feel exiled anywhere. Jupiter thinks it rules the universe, really. I mean, if you think about how it went through the Kuiper belt and knocked Mars off its axis and turned it into the red planet, I got that off Nova. Don't quote me. I'm not sure it's factual, but it seemed factual at the time. But I'm saying that because this expansive planet will bring expansion wherever it is. And as it spends the next year in your 12th house, it will illuminate how you think, how you interact with your everyday activities and the obligations that you put upon yourself because other people are depending upon you for certain quote unquote things. And it's also going to call forth change of some kind, some sort of opportunity to rebirth yourself. And I want to offer this for my cancers because Cancer is so giving and loving that it oftentimes really depletes itself for the greater good. And that, don't know if that's really a divine idea or whether that is a human construct. And as Pluto moves, into Capricorn, your seventh house of contractual obligations, marriage can produce children, professional relationships produce, business babies, and you might be looking at those in a whole new light and how you can serve them by allowing yourself the expansion that Jupiter is offering you. So I'm really reframing how that looks because this feels as if it's a combination of being able to see above and being able to attend to the details at the same time. We will see Jupiter and Mercury come together and meet in Gemini, and that should be pretty interesting because to me that feels really expansive in gathering the information and potentially implementing information. Let's go now to, I'm going to move this back to 12 o'clock. And let's just go to the end of the month where we see Jupiter still it's at 1 degree. Venus is here conjunct the sun in your 12th house. And we see that this is starting to make a favorable aspect to the South Node. So this dynamic right now, while the South Node is still in Libra, we could see that you're starting to reconcile some sort of history that you have with your childhood, your family, your siblings, your cousins. We could see where, as the South Node continues to travel through Libra, it's going to ask all of us to be egoless to our partnerships, but it isn't about deferring our power to the partner. It's about being our authentic self as represented by the North Node and trusting that that is enough within the partnership. So we end the month with this. There's not a square to be found. There's no red lines. We have a little half square here between the North Node. Oh, I'm sorry, not the, is it the North Node? Let me check. Nope, not the North Node. It's actually Chiron. No, not even Chiron. Where's our little half square coming from? There it is. Okay, so this little conjunction is making a bit of a half square to Venus and the sun. This would be Mars and Eris. Eris is Mars's little sister. And of course, Chiron is the healer. And this is healing of the self as we transform ourselves into, I think of Mars as a knight of the round table. And I think of as Eris as part of that. You know, I don't know if you want to change her to be a knightess, but I think that. So there's a little bit of not, maybe you don't see the best of yourself just yet, or you don't see that part of yourself, but the rest of the chart very much is favorable for this transformation, for this epiphany. We see your ruling planet, which zips around the zodiac every month. It's now had a conversation with Saturn, and you kind of might be saying, I'm kind of tired of feeling sorry for myself, or feeling sad, or feeling less than. This is your ninth house of beliefs. And now you're coming into this energy of really this feeling the hand of God on your life's path. And if there have been delays in any way for any of your hopes and your dreams to come true, it's because your soul said, I will be of service to my community and to those around me as they watch me flourish, as I, season in this life journey. So that's the way I want to put it. I hope that makes sense to you. I want to appreciate and thank you all for hanging in there and listening to this whole video. Again, my name is Terry Hunter. If you'd like to book a reading with me, an astrology reading or an intuitive reading, I am available. My information is below in the description, and I will see you in the month of June. It's all about you in June. All right, Gemini. I'm sorry, this is Cancer. Excuse me. Apologize. Forgive me. Cancer. I'll see you in June. Have a wonderful, wonderful May. Bye-bye.